Kayvon Thibodeaux is not going to be on the board long at the NFL draft, just because he's one player. Obviously, he's irreplaceable. But at the same time, is that a position of need? How do we stack up at D end and along the entire line?
Yeah, I think that's a position of need. But you've got some depth back. You just don't have a lot of experience. And obviously, like you said, you're not going to replace the production or the talent of Kayvon Thibodeaux with one player and probably even with 2 to 3. Thibodeaux was playing kind of a hybrid edge end role at Oregon. It kind of remains to be seen exactly the way Dane Lanning wants to operate. I think we'll see a lot of what we saw from Georgia, which is a little bit of a deviation, maybe a little bit from how they utilized a player like Thibodeaux at Oregon under Tim DeRuyter this last year. But a lot of that X's and O stuff, I think I'm going to wait till we get through spring ball and kind of see what it looks like. But certainly they need to find pass rushers. I think a couple of guys on the roster that fans have been really excited about, Braden Swenson probably being the primary name as a guy who did fill in pretty admirably for Thibodeaux this last year when Thibodeaux went down. Trevin Mize, another player off the edge who played pretty well, primarily on rundowns. And then you've got Adrian Jackson and DJ Johnson, who are two kind of veteran guys who I think you see flashes of it, but you kind of also they kind of disappear for a while. Johnson also was playing tight end, so it makes sense why maybe he wasn't quite as pronounced on defense for parts of the year. But yeah, I think that's a position where if there's a player or two in the portal, I think you take a look at it. I don't know if you need prep players because they've hit that pretty hard the last couple cycles. They hit the defensive line. I mean, for them hard because they didn't sign many players, but primarily the 7 players that signed were in the front 7. So they've kind of addressed those areas pretty well. I think they've got decent depth, but if you can go find a portal difference maker, I think you got to do it. Because if you're Oregon, I think you look at the way this defense is composed up front. I think the defensive line should be a strength. And I think obviously inside linebacker, now you have Noah Sewell and hopefully a healthy Justin Flo. You feel pretty good there, but it's that edge spot, Mark, that I think probably another body or just kind of you hope the players develop well under this kind of new staff here, which, by the way, is considered there's pretty high esteem behind this group from a coaching perspective, but they'll have their work cut out for them, I think, to try to replicate what they had with Thibodeaux, obviously.
Yeah, difference maker definitely defines Kayvon Thibodeaux, and to a certain extent, both Williams and Wright from the defensive secondary. Wright had 65 tackles this past year, and Bennett Williams had 3 picks. They're gone.
Bennett Williams actually is coming back, Mark. He has actually one of those few seniors that pulled their name out, so he's back. But I think the loss of Mikael Wright and then DJ James was a corner that started most of last season. He's entered the portal. He's transferred to Auburn. Corner, to me, aside from running back and receiver where we started, I think corner is a position you really need to make some additions. James and Wright played a lot last year. They have a couple of talented guys in Triquez Bridges and Dante Manning. Manning was a 5-star recruit at high school. He's the highest rated corner recruit they've had, but neither really produced at a huge level in limited opportunity last year. And I thought, both were kind of given an audition in the Alamo Bowl. And you watch that game, Oklahoma kind of beat both those guys like a drum. I'm not saying they didn't have nice moments, but they certainly had some moments where you kind of go, those are our primary corners in 22, teams are going to have an opportunity to really stretch the field. So they went out, they added Christian Gonzalez from Colorado, who's a highly regarded, I think it was all conference honorable mention at Colorado in 21. That's a nice addition, but they're also in on some pretty highly regarded prep corners. Jaleel Florence was a top 50 player that was formerly committed to Oregon, that backed off his commitment. Oregon is, I think it sounds like, kind of righted the ship and is in a pretty good spot to land him again and actually finalize that recruitment and get the signing done in a couple of weeks here. And then a couple kids out of Texas are expected to visit this week in Kamari Terrell and Jalen Davis Robinson. I imagine you take one, maybe both of those guys as well. The corner room is pretty thin, and it's certainly relying on inexperienced players, I think, is probably the biggest gripe you would have with that group.